Archaeologists believe that the Essenes occupied this site from about 100 years BC until it was destroyed by the Romans in AD 68 as they crushed the Jewish revolt. So what kind of people were they? During this period, the Essenes were one of a number of Jewish sects jostling for influence, believing only they understood the will of God. Their chief rivals were the Pharisees, and the priests who ran the Jerusalem temple, the Sadducees. According to the Gospels, both sects opposed much of Jesus' teaching. The Essenes called themselves the Sons of Light and had given up all their property and possessions for a desert life. The community believed that they'd created an alternative to the Jerusalem temple, and just as the Jerusalem priests had to be ritually pure, so did they. To maintain this purity, 10 mikvaot, or ritual baths, were built at Qumran.
This ritual bath has low partitions running down the steps. The idea is that you are separating the impure from the pure. That is, you're walking down one side of the partition impure, immersing yourself in the water, and coming back on the other side of the partition purified.
See, and that's where I'm sitting here now, this line going down.
Exactly right.
So this idea of purity was what? I mean, a cleanliness issue, or...?
It has nothing to do with cleanliness or hygiene in the modern sense of the word. Instead, we have certain categories of things which, if you come into contact with them, will render you ritually impure, ranging from mildew on the walls of houses to lizards to corpses. Now, if you came into contact with something like this, the way to purify yourself is to immerse yourself in a ritual bath. The idea of Jewish ritual purity is central to the lifestyle of this community.
In one of the largest rooms at the site, Roland Deveau found what he believed to be the wreckage of mud brick tables and benches, possibly used by Essene scribes.
Now, the reason Deveau identified this as a scriptorium is because mixed in with the debris, he also found inkwells. And the presence of inkwells is rare on archaeological sites in Israel, and so that suggested to Deveau that the room must have been used as a writing.
Was there anything, besides what you've described, that can tell us about the scrolls and the way they were written, or anything else about?
Well, our best evidence is the furniture itself. If you think about the preparation of scrolls, what are they doing? They're taking individual pieces of processed animal hide, parchment, and putting them together side by side to form a scroll. These long, narrow tables would be ideal for laying out the pieces of parchment. So I think that Deveau was correct in identifying this as a scriptorium, and if that's true, then we can reasonably assume that some of the Dead Sea Scrolls might have been written or copied in this room.
The Essenes had been expecting trouble from the Roman army, and that's why they kept the scrolls hidden in caves. They believed that they were living in the last days and were awaiting the arrival of the Messiah. This period would be a time of fierce battles. One of the manuscripts from Cave 1 was the so-called War Scroll. It describes a conflict between the powers of good and the Kittim, another name for the Romans. And it gives us a remarkable insight into Essene battle plans.
On the one hand, it actually describes real military formations, military equipment, battle tactics. On the other hand, there are all sorts of fantastic elements in it, such as having angels participate in the war alongside the soldiers. There was certainly a fight at Qumran. That is, something happened at Qumran. The site is destroyed, and we do have remains of military equipment in the destruction level, mostly arrowheads. So there was some fighting that occurred. Presumably some members of the community were killed at that point. Others may have fled.
Like earlier messianic rebels who got in the way of Rome, the Essenes met a violent end. Josephus tells us that they were tortured in order, he wrote, to induce them to blaspheme or to eat some forbidden thing, but they refused to yield, nor ever once did they cringe or shed a tear. Cheerfully they resigned their souls, confident that they would receive them back again. Qumran was never resettled, and the Essenes disappeared from the pages of history. The more I hear about them, the more I want to see this legacy they left behind on parchment and papyrus. Very few of the Dead Sea Scrolls are on public display. Because of their fragile state, most are stored safely in Jerusalem, my next destination. I know this looks like a nondescript office corridor, but it's actually close to here that all 17,000 fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls are kept. Now obviously the Israeli Antiquity Authority doesn't want to give away their exact location, but we've been lucky because they're going to let us see a few special samples.
So this will be the first scroll that we'll show you.
Okay.
It's a beautiful piece from the Psalm scroll that was discovered in Cave 11.
It's very exciting. This looks, I mean, on first reaction, looks amazingly well preserved and doesn't look anything like 2,000 years old.
Yes.
It's amazingly neat as well. I mean, very, very carefully.
It is. What you can see is, before starting to write, they would draw the lines.
Yeah, you can see quite clearly the lines.
And the letters, unlike what we're used to today, when you write on top of the line, if you look carefully, you'll see that the writing is hanging down from the line.
Right. The scroll features two alphabets, the square Hebrew script still used today and the older Paleo-Hebrew used when the scribe wrote the name of God to indicate the importance of the word and also that it shouldn't be pronounced.
So this is part of Psalm 119, and this is how it reads in Hebrew. Tuv ta v'dat lemdenu ki b'mitzvotecha hemanti. Teach me wisdom and knowledge, for in your commands I trust.
So how do you feel when you're able to, as you say, I mean, 2,000 years on, able to look at this scroll or any other fragments and read it?
Well, to me, this is what the scrolls are all about. And I'm a religious person, so to me, it's like, you know, I open the Bible and I look at the scrolls and it's one and the same, and so I can feel the history.
Penina showed me a portion of the Book of Deuteronomy. 30 copies were found in the Qumran caves, making it amongst the most popular books of the community. It contains one of the most famous passages in the whole Hebrew Bible, the Ten Commandments.
Here it says, honor thy father and thy mother, kabed et avicha v'et imecha, leman yarichun yamecha, so that you will, your life will lengthen.
Now, one of the challenges is that these scrolls survived for 2,000 years out in the desert, in those caves. Question is, how do you make sure that they survive for another 2,000 years?
Okay, so the best for them would be to take them back and bury them in the caves.
Right.
But of course
that's not going to happen.
Not going to happen, and therefore we monitored the caves. We monitored them summer, winter, day, night, and came to an average of what the best humidity is and what the best temperature is. And of course,
to recreate the conditions in the caves.
What we tried to do was to recreate the conditions in the caves, and we keep them, as I said, in total darkness, and that's how they're kept.
Scholars are often unsure whether scroll fragments have been correctly joined together. Dr. Ira Rabin is analyzing the ink of the scrolls. She believes each scribe made up his own unique ink, so by testing the composition of the ink on each fragment, she can prove once and for all if they are a correct match.
Here you have two fragments. They were put together and they are supposed to constitute one scroll.
Right.
Now, what we're still working, we are trying to prove is that these two pieces belong to different scrolls, but the scrolls written in the same place.
But then, Ara, does that mean that the implications of this is that some fragments that have already been put together, once the ink analysis comes through and they're different, they'll have to be taken apart, if you see what I mean?
We have some suspicions that this might be not the case. It doesn't mean that I'm going to go through all the fragments. They are grouped in certain way.
Right.
But definitely this is the implication.
Ira's work on the ink could challenge established thinking about many scroll fragments and settle disputes about others. It's a very interesting area, so we agree that she'll get in contact when her ink tests begin.